Ja, als het lukt. Anders kan je dus werven net zoals in lokaal. Of worst case gaan we met z'n allen in een hele kleine stel. Alright. So I hope you all are now considering to start your own SaaS business. I will certainly invest, because ladies sites are making me so much money. Hey. Well, that all depends on how much you need. Alright, so some architectural considerations. I think this kind of makes sense. Oh, before I continue, very interesting question. Somebody said, yeah, this ASP model, it sounds good, but I have no idea where it's coming from, and it's completely new to me. But here's a nice example. So here you have Exact. Exact has Exact Online, which is real SaaS, the way SaaS is supposed to be. And AFAS, as they say they sell SaaS. So if you go to their website, they say, oh, we sell AFAS Online, and price per month, and it's all the same. But actually it isn't. Because what AFAS does, AFAS installs a separate server for every customer. And for every customer, they have an instance of their software running. So with different versions, with different customizations and things like that. Exact on the other hand, they're very strict. They say, well, we don't do customizations for customers, but we do run it as a SaaS instance. So if you find a bug in Exact, you can easily fix it, because if it's here, you can just fix it once. If you find a bug in AFAS, you have to fix it multiple times. So I already say it here, total cost of ownership for Exact is lower than total cost of ownership for AFAS. Because AFAS has to maintain a separate instance for each of their online customers, whereas Exact just has to maintain one instance. And at the end of the day, scalability, of course, beats non-scalability. So that's where the secret lies. If you use the word scalability as an answer to the question of why is ASP worse than SaaS, that's probably the best answer. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the architectural considerations. You can already maybe a little bit imagine how hard it must be for a SaaS company to make sure that every customer is happy. And you will see that sometimes a customer buys a product and they're buying a hammer where they needed a screwdriver. So you can imagine that, right now my wife is using Ladysite for a website that isn't really a site for association. Now if my wife wasn't my wife, I probably would have said no, just use any content management system. That's just my wife. So, but if she came with many different questions like, oh, we also need this feature, we also need that feature. And then slowly you think, well, this is my product strategy, and this is where she wants to go. So what do you do then? And in the case of SaaS, that's of course extra interesting. So one architectural consideration is, of course, that you need to be able to scale. So think, for instance, about Amazon Web Services, think about webservices.nl, think about Moneybird, think about Netflix, Spotify. How do you make sure that things keep running in such a context? Another, enable multi-tenant data. So you can imagine that, well, my mother has a store, actually my father has it nowadays, but so he has this little piece of data. Now let's say another company, a bigger company, has a lot of data in Exact. At no point should it be that my dad can actually see what's in this particular database, but they share a database. So there's always that risk that somewhere your customer ID is wrong, or you get, especially with drop-downs, it's quite hard to create a drop-down that doesn't access the whole database, so that's typically where these errors occur. And then all of a sudden you see maybe all your customers with another customer. And then, of course, you were totally screwed as the supplier, because you're doing some very bad things. Also important in this context, like I said, what if these customers are very differently profiled? So my dad, he uses the application maybe once every 3 months for his VAT and stuff. But this other customer also uses it for HRM and for many other features. Well, if that's true, then the other customer may use it 10 times more. So that may also mean that the server gets a little bit slower. And that's really annoying for my dad, who only uses it once per month, and then it's really slow, he has a bad customer experience. So you have to sort of balance these things out and make sure that, maybe if you have customers in the States and in Europe, then you can have them running on the same server, because especially in the States they'll go to bed at some point, and then in Europe they can continue the other way around. In Europe they go to bed, and then those servers can be used by the States. So there's a number of things you can do there. And of course facilitate customization. So of course people want their own branding, they want their own thing, their own process, their own business process. So you have to be able to facilitate this. And the company that does this best, and it's kind of a fluke, because is Salesforce, and Force.com, because Salesforce has enabled this completely customizable architecture that as soon as you're with Salesforce, you can basically automate your whole business with Salesforce. And I find that very interesting how they do it. So facilitate customization is also really important. Well, here we have another nice picture. Yes?
Yeah, when you facilitate customization, is it an important consideration to make it some sort of usable, or is it no consideration because you have professionals?
What are you talking about? When?
Well, I can imagine like when you make something more customizable, it's usually harder to use because it's not so straightforward.
Yeah.
So do you need to take that in consideration?
Yes, very much. It's a very good question. So customization, doesn't it make life harder in a sense? And it does really make life harder for a number of reasons. So if you look at Exact, for instance, Exact allows some end user customization. But if a specific request comes in from a customer saying, yeah, but I would like to have 15% VAT because I do something bad to the taxes, then Exact says, sorry, our product is not for you. It's a one-size-fits-all product, and we don't do any customizations exactly because of this reason. It just gets too complex. So with AFOS, it's also very easy to customize it, and they have a lot of flexibility in that. But they also know that their total profit per customer will go down if they have to constantly supply more services and more advice, because all they want is to make money from licenses. So it's a strategic decision, and it also completely depends on your market. You can imagine in the context of World of Warcraft, you can supply the same interface to everyone, whereas with Labelside, you need to supply some kind of customizability. So it's a really decent question. A lot of interesting points come from that. We will talk about that more in 2 separate classes, so no worries. So here we have sort of 4 levels of multi-tenancy. So they use middleware, was said. I think that's basically, we'll talk about that more. So here you have 4 models. So you have, single tenant. So here you see one tenant uses one instance. Now this is a little bit like the AFOS example, or I could do it for my Joomla websites as well. When I used to deliver a lot of Joomla websites, I would just create a new instance for every customer. Of course, you also have for custom ASP, so let's say you're Parentix, well then you have Exact running here, Exchange running there, and a different version of Exact running there. So there you can already see this is sort of the least easy model to use because you have to maintain different instances and different versions and different things. Whereas here, if I update this Joomla instance, I can probably do the other 2 fairly quickly as well, or even automate it. And then you can get to configurable multi-tenant. So here you're looking at Labelside. You have one instance, one server, and different tenants running on that same server. And then the next level is for really large companies. You have several instances, several tenants, and a tenant load balancer. So you can imagine that, this tenant is sent to this server, this tenant uses 2 servers, depending on how big the load is being used by those tenants. Does that clarify the ASP SaaS? I don't think I worked on it so much in previous years. Well, take a quick look at business models. I was already talking a little bit about business models, but I really like this figure. And I think I may have mentioned this before. This was created by MIT students. And what I really like here is, so this is sort of the traditional software business model. So you have mainstream consumers, local client installation, and a license fee, upfront license fee. And you see that as you start moving towards the outer skirts, that things get a little bit stranger and more modern, so to say. So local client, local server. So this is sort of what you saw also happening a lot: client-server deployments, then hosted, remote web-based. Then you can see all kinds of different deployment or delivery methods. Different customer models, so small businesses, mainstream enterprise customers, early adopters. I'm not saying these are the axes that you can use to define any business model, but I do like it to show the variation of business models. And then of course the revenue model, how does money come in? So upfront license fee, subscription, advertising based, transaction based, free but not free, those kinds of questions. Yes?
Can you give an example of bundles as part of a hardware product?
Let me see if I can find a good one. Yeah, I want to say Boxy. So Boxy could be downloaded. Does anybody know Boxy here? Or XBMC, yeah. So you know XBMC probably, and Boxy was a clone from XBMC that you could install at home. Could, no longer. And that was for free. but you can also buy the hardware product with which it came bundled. Yeah, the boxy box you can buy now. So this is nice to show you the different business models. Yeah, so one thing of course is don't apply one size fits all for both functionality and pricing. So what I particularly mean by that is that you'll see that I see this with Ladyside now, that some customers use their deployment very intensively for very specific features. I also see that some features are actually more valuable than I originally thought they were, and the other way around. Also, data integration is still a challenge. So you can imagine that if you're Exact, you have to integrate with Rabobank, with ING, with and also some more exotic banks, maybe some payment systems, Ideal, but also the payment providers, credit cards. So you can imagine things are still very tough there. Also, if you have your own deployment, you can manage this yourself. If you install the software yourself, you can determine, okay, I can export to Excel. I can publish this in PDF. So you can make these customizations yourself even if you want to. Whereas if you're doing this in a SaaS environment, well, you decide what your customers get to use, whether they get their PDF or whether they get their Excel exports. So these are very important questions. And of course, protecting proprietary data. Well, we talked about this already a little bit. How is your data protected from unauthorized access? In the case of the Ladyside, not so important, but in the case of Moneybird, it already gets a little bit shady. If I can see the customer database of somebody else, then it's a little bit dangerous. How is your customer assured access to the data? So what if you go under, or what if your company goes under, or the service provider where your hoster goes bankrupt? And how much effort is necessary to migrate data back to the enterprise or to another SaaS solution? Also really important. Some of you may know that from Google you can now say, okay, download all the data that Google has on me personally. So you need those kinds of buttons for Ladyside as well to export everything. And right now we don't have that, but most SaaS providers do. Alright, so now we're going to go a little bit deeper into these web-based business models. And if you're thinking about starting a business, or if you're analyzing business models yourself, this is, I think, very interesting. So, what's cool about this is that with these 5, I think you have a pretty nice overview of all the business models that are out there. And you wouldn't expect it when you see it like this, but when we go deeper, you'll see the plethora of different business models that are available. So brokerage, that's, you help somebody find something. Advertising, Google and others. Intermediary, you sell information. A merchant, you sell products, and a community, you have a community from which you, on which you capitalize. Okay, so brokerage, well, market makers, they bring buyers and sellers together. So think about marketplace, they can be B2B, B2C, C2C, and the broker makes its money by charging a fee for each transaction it enables. So gaspedaal.nl, marketplace, Funda, well, all of these are brokerage models, and they make money in different ways. So C2C is marketplace, B2C is also marketplace, and B2B, I don't know so many of them, but I think Alibaba or something is one of those. That's quite a large broker. That's clear. So here you see some brokerage forms, buy and sell fulfillment, market exchanges. Well, let's see what is nice. So a buyer aggregator, I think we'll go deeper into these later. Yeah, so buy, sell, fulfillment. So for instance, online financial brokerage, you can go to the stock market and get registered as a stockbroker and then buy stock. But you can also just do it through Alex, and through Alex you can be up and running in 3 or 4 days. Also travel agents, well, and volume and go overhead to deliver the best negotiated prices. I don't know how to say that. Well, market exchanges, so that's of course where you create the market and you help buyers of buses and vans find sellers of those. I'm saying buses because that's a professional market, obviously. Typically transaction fee. Let's take a look at trade costs. So this is a world class. So this is a place like Alibaba. So here you can see, okay, I can buy stainless steel from China, or I can buy all kinds of things. And of course, they're assuming here that you're going to buy large numbers because it's business to business. You're not going to buy a couple of needles and threads. You're going to buy kilometers of this stuff.
Do these guys make money or no?
Yeah, so they make a little bit of money when they connect you to another. You can pay, I think, to be connected to another party.
Yeah, okay.
It's not pretty.
You have no faith in the business model?
Well, it looks, it's just ugly.
It is an ugly website, that's true. And I think, I'm thinking Alibaba or something like that is much better than this, so it's much more beautiful. But this is the one I found.
Marktplaats looks actually Marktplaats looks actually.
Yeah, good point. Craigslist, Marktplaats are all sites that aren't very pretty, so they can be successful as well.
Here's their image. Like it's known to the.
Yeah. Marktplaats was founded by the Kringloopwinkels, so that's an image that if you ever walked into a Kringloopwinkel, you know what a crappy store is. Yeah, well, that's another point. Well, the business trading community, so it's a site that acts as a central comprehensive source of information and dialogue for a particular vertical market. So here you see, so here we see a nice overview of buses you could buy. So for 22,500 euros, this can be your next bus. Engine still works. So you can obviously see that this is a very specific trading community. So if one of you is interested in buying a bus at some point, you can do it here. Alright, so buyer aggregator, that's pretty interesting. That's where we as a group say, okay, we all want an iPhone 5. Get us the best deal possible. So here you have samenkopen.net. I don't think it's even working anymore, so don't look it up. And sellers can pay a small percentage of each sale, or the buyers can pay it. Distributors quite interesting. Again, B2B. So it's more. Let me see. Yeah. So for instance, Converge.com is one of those places that brings people together. Also, more in terms of services. It says, okay, you want a website, publish your assignment here, and then people can respond to it and bring them together, and brings together basically supply and demand in some smart way. Virtual mall, well, those are of course the shopping sites, and auction brokers. So auctions for sellers, let me see. So I have eBay and BVA auctions. Do you all know BVA auctions? Apparently it's not fun.
www.
Sure. You must be right.
And then .nl.
Yeah, we're there. Yeah. So here we can buy a nice Ferrari. Let's see. So this will start in about 10 days, and then of course you can buy this, and of course there's a person who's selling these cars and hoping to make a nice price with a nice reserve price. Alright, always a good reason to show a nice Ferrari. Moving along. Where were we? Converge. Alright, so you have reverse auction where you say, okay, I'm going to buy an iPhone, but I'm only willing to pay 600. Who can give it to me? Classifieds, well, Marktplaats, Monster, Craigslist, and of course a search agent. So the idea of a search agent is not like Google. Search agent is truly